Hey Stitch Cutie, I'm Brittany with Stitches of Love Quilting, and I'm so excited because this is the first video tutorial for using your embroidery machine and your block of the month box to make your full block one in the hoop. It's going to be so exciting to work on this. I hope you're going to have a blast. So what you need to make sure you have is that your boxes come in the mail. It's so cute. Open it up, get your materials out, and then make sure that you go to our website. Under your account, you'll be able to download the file for the embroidery machine for block one of the Boo Crew block of the month. And then we are going to, from now on in the rest of the video, I'm going to switch the camera over to filming from above, and you and I are going to work step by step filming everything that you need to make your block one. So make sure you have your 8" by 12" hoop, you have your block, you have your embroidery files ready to go, and let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about all the tools that we're going to need to have ready to make this as easy as possible. So as I mentioned before, you need to have your 8 by 12 hoop. I have mine hooped with a medium tearaway stabilizer. I really like working with this. It's great in the hoop, works for all kinds of embroidery projects. So I'm going to have that ready to go. I'm going to have the file loaded in my embroidery machine, of course. I'm going to take the materials out of my box and I'm going to press them so they're nice and smooth. So I am using a Steady Betty as my pressing surface in front of me. And then I have my Steam Fast Travel Iron. I've used this guy for years. I love it. It's fantastic, especially when we get to working with ironing our pieces actually in the hoop. So we'll press both of these. You just want to make sure they're nice and flat and get any wrinkles that may have happened during shipping out, because they're nice and orderly when they leave the office, and I know the mail gets tousled around, so hopefully your fabric's not too wrinkled by the time it gets to you. Now, a few other tools that I like to have. I always use Oregon needles in my embroidery machine. I think they're great, and I change my needle fairly often, maybe like every 5 or 6 projects. I don't know if that's like a scientific way to change my needles, but these are really inexpensive but very high quality needles, so I don't mind changing my needles out very often. Now the threads that I'm using for this month are the Sulky 40 weight rayon threads. The colors that you need for this month are black, gold, and orange. The black is number 1005. The gold is 0567. And then the orange is 1168. I actually haven't used this orange before out of my new thread pack, so I'm excited to use that today. I always like to have one spare bobbin wound. I think that makes it easy in case I do run out of bobbin in the middle of a project. I don't freak out. I have a bobbin ready to go. And then I like to have medical tape is what I use to tape my pieces in place. If you Google on Amazon, or not Google on Amazon, Amazon, Transport 3M tape, you can get a pack of like 6 or however many of these for like 10 or 20 bucks. It's not a bad deal at all. I have my Karen K. Buckley scissors. I like to have these and my little snippers. And then of course I'll have my rotary mat and a rotary for cutting at the very end. And now the pieces, what I'm gonna do before I get started, I like to have a little jar to keep my applique pieces in while I'm working with them. And then I have a little trash can. And what I do is I take all my pieces from my kit and I peel the backing and I'm gonna sit them in my little jar. So I'm just gonna go piece by piece, remove all of that backing and keep it in the jar. You'll notice that every piece is loose and cut out except for this right here. There were 2 pieces with yellow. So all you need to do with those handy dandy scissors is just lightly free those. So you just do one snip there, and then you just do one little snip at the end here and the end here. So then you have your 2 applique pieces from that. Okay, so peel all of your backing, and then we'll all meet back here in just 1 second to get started with the first step. So the first thread color that we're going to load, now that we have all of our pieces ready to go, our workspace is in order, we're going to load the black 1005, and we're going to do the very first step on the embroidery file, which is gonna stitch just one, what feels like a random line across our stabilizer. So we'll be back to show you what to do with that random line that stitches. Now what you see is just one, what feels like a random line towards the bottom of your hoop. It's about 3/4 of the way down. Let me tell you what we're gonna do with that. You are going to take your orange piece of fabric and your black piece of fabric, and you're gonna put them right sides together. Now the black is really, there is no right side, so don't worry about that, but just make sure that you have your orange facing up. You're going to make sure that you line it up against this, the width where they're the same. See, if you turned it this way, your black would be too long. That's the wrong direction. So your pieces will meet perfectly. And we're just going to lightly press them together. I mean, there's nothing fusible about this at all, but I think pressing fabric together sort of makes it become friends and stay together. That's my theory, at least. So now what I'm gonna do, my hoop is so long that it doesn't fit in the frame, so I'm gonna turn it sideways. Just want you all to be aware of that. And now what I'm gonna do is take this fabric and I'm going to line it up right exactly with that black line. Maybe just like a smooch, like a little hair over it so I don't see it. And you can see my fabric is wider than my hoop because my hoop is 8 inches and we give you 9-inch wide fabric. Just sort of make sure you're centered. You're going to have more than enough fabric, but I just think it's good to center it. So again, I've put it just lightly over the line. So when my hoop is facing up and down, this is what my hoop looks like. So I have the fabric just over that first line. I am going to put just a little bit of tape to make sure this stays nicely in place. So I'm just gonna put a little, whoop, if it'll not stick to my fingers, just a little bit, because what's gonna happen next is the machine is gonna stitch our 1/4-inch seam allowance for us. So just a couple pieces of tape is all you need to hold it securely. So I'll put the hoop back on the arm of our machine and proceed to the next step. Now I do wanna point out that the first several steps that we do together, I have the machine programmed to say black, red, black, red, black, red. You're gonna keep your black spool of thread on until I tell you otherwise. The very last 2 steps of the entire file will be when we switch to orange and yellow, but until then, everything is black. I just denote it this way so that you're very clear about which step we are in the process. So let's proceed. So now the machine just made the 1/4-inch seam allowance for us, see? So that very first line is down here under the fabric. The second step is that 1/4-inch. So we have a perfect 1/4-inch seam allowance for our quilt block. So I'm gonna carefully remove that tape. Make sure not to tear your stabilizer because that's never good. And the entire process of this, as we're taking this on and off, be careful not to distort the contents of your hoop, because as we stitch, if the contents of your hoop get off, then so will your stitches be off, and that's not a good thing. So just get the tape into your trash can. You can see I love having the little trash can beside me. So all my white backings are in there, you know, the fusible backings. Now what we're gonna do, I have this laying flat on my Steady Betty so that my contents aren't gonna be disturbed. And I am just going to take this black fabric and flip it down. I'm gonna gently finger press it, and then I'm going to take my iron and make that perfect 1/4-inch seam press down so beautifully. Look at that. So now we have the background fabric of our block. Looks great. Now what I'm gonna do is tape this fabric in place at the top and bottom. And that is because the next step our machine is going to do for us, this third step, is going to be to baste all the way around, which is essentially at the very end gonna be our trim line. And it's then gonna do our first round of applique placement lines. So just a little tape at the bottom. And you can see I'm not using very much tape. That's what I love about this little transport tape, is you can tear it so thin because you don't really need much. But again, there is no, there's no quilt police in real life. So if you like to use a bunch of tape, no one's gonna see you use a bunch of tape. Use it. And you'll see if you watch any of the past videos, there are some days where I just feel like a taping queen and I use a ton of it. So don't be concerned about doing it exactly like I'm doing it in terms of the tape. The rest of the steps, do it just like me because you wanna have a perfect block. So now I'm gonna put this back on and proceed to the next step. And the machine is going to give us an outline of our base, and then the 3 legs of the spiders, the spider body, you know, the leg pieces, and then the heart, and we'll be back to iron those on. Okay, so we have the line for our first applique piece. And I think just before I said it was gonna outline our 3 spiders. It doesn't do that just yet. It does just this one piece because we need to build our layers a little bit. So disregard that. We just have one little piece to iron on right now. So you're gonna take your purple base, you're gonna put it right inside that triangle, and your piece is gonna fit perfectly. And that's because the same files that we use to laser cut all these applique pieces are the same files that we use to digitize for you. So for the embroidery. So now we have that one piece ironed on. Now the machine is going to stitch the lines for that yellow triangle base and then the heart at the top. And again, you're going to keep your black thread on all the way until the very last 2 steps. So just keep going with that black thread until I tell you otherwise. So now you have your heart and the little outline for the triangles at the bottom. So we're going to take those and iron them right in place. Easy peasy to fit inside here. And you just want to make sure your points are nice and lined up. Looks great. I'm just going to tap the middle one down and then the side. And again, don't you just love this little iron? It really helps you keep everything in place. You don't have to worry about ironing on your hoop and messing it up. I love it. And then we're going to do our little heart right here at the top. Put that in place. Boop. There we go. So now when we put it back on, those 3 little spiders that I mentioned at the beginning, now they're going to be outlined for you, and we'll iron those on. So let's go on to the next step. So you have your 1, 2, 3 little spiders. So again, we're going to put this right flat on top of our Steady Betty in front of us. And I'm going to iron on my little spider bodies. Aren't they so cute? And you just want to make sure that when you lay it down that everything's in place. And then I like to focus on just one side at a time. After I know it's in the right spot, I'll get these legs ironed on. And then I'll come over here and make sure these are staying in the right spot. And press them down. And then I'll do a good press in the middle. Just because when you're working with all those little legs, I think it's easier to kind of go from one side to the other. So again, get this little guy in place here. Looking good. And they should pretty much just lay right in there flat for you. There you go. And so we're gonna press on this side. And then just make sure he stayed in place over here. There we go. And now our last little spider. So now the next step, what our machine is going to do for us is a little different. It's going to go on and buttonhole stitch all of the spiders for us. And let me tell you why. If I would have waited and had all of the buttonhole stitching happen in one step at the end, your machine would have to knot off at every leg before each of the bodies for the spider. And that would give you like, I think 24 knots. So to save time on your machine and to make your machine not have to do all those extra knots, we're gonna go on and buttonhole stitch these spider bodies right now. And then your machine, and while it's at it, it's just gonna do the heart, because why not? And then it's gonna give you an outline in that same step for your 3 bodies. So put this back on with your black thread, let it do the buttonhole stitch, and then we're gonna come back and iron on those spider bodies. And just like that, all of your little spiders are buttonhole stitched, and so is your heart. It's starting to come to life. It's just too cute, I can hardly stand it. So now it's time to iron on these 3 little spider bodies. Again, I turn this sideways because it just fits better in front of me between myself and the embroidery machine. So I am going to start by putting in the body of the bottom spider. And you want to make sure you do this in the specific order because they do sit on top of each other. They overlap. So you want to make sure that you get these ironed on in the correct order. So I'm going to put this little polka dotted piece on. Then we're going to do our middle spider. And again, you can see it goes over the previous spider body that we've put on. So we'll give this a tap into place. And now we're going to do the final spider body. And what our machine is going to do next for us is outline all the faces, and we'll do our last round of ironing on pieces. And I would say for sure we are way more than halfway done, which is awesome. Isn't it so fast and easy with your embroidery machine? It just is so much fun to me. I love the machine embroidery. So let's put this back on and we'll be right back for that last round of ironing. Okay, so now you'll have all of your faces outlined. And I know it's probably hard to see that black stitching on the camera on top of the black, but hopefully you can see it enough on the camera to have the tutorial be very helpful for you. So what we're gonna do is first iron on our little mouth up here. And now if you have any trouble seeing your thread, the black on black at home, if you have just a pair of like basic readers, like magnifying reader glasses, you can put those on and it'll really help you see it. And y'all are gonna see the top of my head. I'm sorry, because I have to get close to make sure I get it in the right position. So just make sure you have your little smile where you want it. Doo, doo, doo. There we go, and I'm gonna press that little mouth into place. The next piece I'm gonna iron on is my little yellow zigzag right here. And again, sorry for my head coming into view, I'm sure it is, because I just have to see where I'm going. And we'll tap that into place. Now I'm gonna put the last mouth on. And this, again, on a long piece, I'll hold it in place on one side and start ironing from the other, because you want to make sure you get it into position just right. So let me tap, kind of tap in the middle, and then make sure both ends are in place. And now we just have two little eyeballs to put in place. We have our green circle right here. And that's actually an oval, not a circle, and it's perfectly symmetrical, so you don't have to worry about this. Make sure when you're putting your pieces on, you have your fusible down. I don't know if you just saw, I almost laid it down with my fusible side up. That would make a mess on my iron, so don't do that. Okay, and so now we're gonna leave black on for this next step again. And the machine is going to do the stitching around the 3 bodies. It's gonna do around the, oh, did I really just iron? You guys, I was talking about not doing that and I did it. Oh my goodness, I even talked about it. Actually, it didn't make a mess. Let's see if we can recover. I'm just gonna leave this blooper in. Y'all are gonna think I'm crazy. Let's see if I can get this to iron on. Ooh, I might have to go get another one. In any case, don't do what I just did. I was even saying don't do that, and then I did it. Can y'all believe it? Okay, so now he's ironed on. Whew, I saved it. So if you do that, you can save your piece. That's cool to know. So I am going to put this back on again with the black thread. It's gonna go around the 3 bodies. It's gonna go around all the little details on the face except for the yellow and orange, because that's gonna be a thread change coming up. And it's gonna do the base. So we'll be back for our very first thread change. Yay! Okay, so now officially all of the black is buttonhole stitched. Doesn't it look so good? I'm trying to get it close for you so you can see. So yours is gonna look just exactly the same. So exciting. So now it's time for our very first of 2 color changes, and that is to load our gold yellow color, the 0567, onto our machine, and the machine is just gonna super quick like stitch our little eye for us. So in no time flat, look, that one little yellow eyeball is all stitched up. Looks great. And so now time for our final color change and the final step on the machine itself before we trim, and that is to load 1168, this like beautiful orange color, onto your machine, and it is going to do the buttonhole stitch around the little smile of your biggest spider. Yay! Do a little happy dance. You're all done. So now all we have to do is take this out of the hoop and trim it. And it's so easy to trim it. It takes just a second. So let me put this in front of me. And you'll see in my workspace what I've done is I've put a rotary mat right on top of my Steady Betty. And so I have a ruler, and then you'll have your rotary cutter, and it's as simple as cutting right on this stitched line or just a hair inside of that rectangle. Now I do want to tell you, at the end of the 12 months, you're going to trim this just a smidge more. I wanted you to be able to take it out of here and have it, you know, sit comfortably until you're done with all of your blocks, and then you'll trim it at the very end for the final trim. So we're just going to line up again right inside of that stitched line. Basically, you could say like right on it. You're just trimming it so that it's trimmed away. And then you're going to turn it. Now, you should have a longer ruler, but I want to be able to stay in the frame for you, so I am going to trim part way and then move it down a little bit. So see, just trimming right. And this actually is a good way to show you. See, I am barely inside of that stitched line. And then just line up here again. There we go. Now we're gonna turn it for the next side. And if you wanted, you could just keep this in the box until the end of the year and, you know, trim it just once at the end. It's up to you. But I like to trim it now and see what it's gonna look like. It's gonna be so cute. And again, you're not gonna put any of the buttons or embellishments on until after your quilt is quilted. And that's so that if you're the one quilting it, or if your long armer's quilting it, those little buttons can get hung up in the foot of your machine and can really mess up the machine and or the quilt and cause a needle to break. It's just a little catastrophe. So you always want to put your embellishments on after you've quilted if you're going to be doing any kind of long arming. And so that's all going to come in your 13th month, okay? So don't worry, you'll get all your buttons just at the end of the year. And so voila, it's all done. Don't you just love it? Look how great it looks. Let me see if I can come in close and just give you a nice overview of everything stitched. And so now you can do, I think the least fun part, and that is to take out the stabilizer. Now if you've watched any of my tutorials for like the mug rugs and stuff, I don't always take out all my stabilizer. But this is a really special piece, this quilt that you're making. And I think you're gonna wanna keep it, and it'll probably become like a family heirloom. Or I think it should if it's not gonna. And so I will take the time to gently pull out all my stabilizer between my pieces. And I just want to tell you right here, don't freak out. Remember this little thread that was our initial guide? You'll just want to trim right there, see, just so it doesn't pull. And then right here on the other end, you'll see it's going to naturally come up because it's not sewn to the fabric, right? It was just sewn. That very first random line that went on, that was the line that we used to guide where to place our fabric. That's what you'll just snip because you don't want to like pull away. And then to get inside, a little trick, I take my little pokers and just ever so gently use it to pull away. And then again, because it's this special quilt, I am going to take the time to pull out my stabilizer. So put something good on Netflix, sit on the couch, have a cup of tea, and pull your stabilizer out. But you're all done with block 1. I hope that you had so much fun doing this. Thanks so much for being a member of the Block of the Month. It is a blast to have so many of you doing this with us. And if you have any questions throughout the process, don't hesitate to reach out and email us. And if you happen to be watching this tutorial and you're not a member yet, you can definitely join the Boo Crew Block of the Month. Visit stitchesoflovequilting.com, click on clubs, scroll down to the Block of the Months. It's about middle bottom of the page. You can sign up for this and then you can do it machine applique on your regular sewing machine, or you can add on the embroidery files like the tutorial was for this video and join along with us. Happy stitching, everyone!